infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. If you're new here, I hope you're enjoying it enough to head to your podcatcher of choice to rate and review the show. This helps it aggregate across the listening platforms, which will turn into more people willing to come on and share their encounters. If you've been listening for years, I'd ask that you please do the same. Home base for Into the Fray is intothefrayradio.com. There you will find all episodes, blog posts, and get bonus content info. Speaking of that bonus content, on top of the free weekly show, I also produce bonus content for Patreon and Apple Podcasts Premium. On either platform, you get all bonus audio episodes and early releases, each one ad-free, of course. Full disclosure, though, Patreon has a bit more in the way of perks because of their interface. Over there, you will get video versions of patron-only chats, the private Discord channel, and merch at certain pledge levels. So head to patreon.com/intothefray or your Apple Podcatcher app to sign up for bonus content today. You can find me on the big three social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Linktree link in each of my bios will take you to all the places you want to venture regarding ITF, including Small Town Monsters documentaries, various ways to listen to the show, Beyond the Fray books, contact info for me, and more. And lastly, and really honestly, most importantly, if you'd like to share your encounter or encounters on Into the Fray, the best way to get in touch is by emailing me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com. And without further ado, let's get to the interview.
I was watching the Monster Week on Blaze TV in the UK, and it had the on the trail of Bigfoot, and I saw you, and I thought, well, that looks like a more open-minded person than some of the people out there, and you look a nice person. So I thought, well, let's see if you'd like to hear my story, because I saw on that program that a lot of the investigators aren't open to the idea that it's not a physical animal, that it is something else.
Well, yeah, Dylan, no, I really do appreciate you reaching out, and we kind of touched base, and then all of a sudden we went from you saying, hey, I have a very interesting encounter that you might want to hear, a very close-up encounter, to now the very next day, here we are, we're recording.
I was
so
10 feet away from it. I mean, literally, if that, 10 feet.
Yeah, that's not a position I would want to be in with a shadow person slash, if I could speak this morning, figure. And, you know, actually, Heidi Hollis over here, my side of the pond, is the one that kind of coined that phrase many, many years ago. I don't know exactly when, but she is the one that came up with shadow person, I think, specifically, because she's had her own encounters with it. Yeah, so, okay.
I can tell of a lot of shadow figure encounters. I mean, I had one that was regularly around me at the time when my father was passing from cancer, and I saw the same one frequently.
And it was
a woman that was dressed like you know how the puff-sleeved dress that they had in the musical Wicked. it was a woman dressed in that kind of clothes. When my dad was dying on his deathbed in a nursing home, I fell asleep once, but on a chair by his bed. I woke up to see the figure bent over him, holding both of his hands.
Now, Dylan, real quick question here for you right off the bat. So why do you classify that as a shadow person or shadow figure versus a ghost or classic ghost?
It was a black silhouette, but moving. So I would say that was a shadow. It's like a shadow, but a shadow that isn't cast by any actual physical person.
Right.
Although she did put her hands on me, on my shoulders at one point from behind.
Trying to comfort you?
She seemed to take a lot of interest in me. She appeared before my dad became ill. I saw her at the corner of my eye, looking over my shoulder at some of my artwork in a photography store where they had a printer. And I'd gone to get something printed to send away to someone. And I saw this woman look over my shoulder. And when I actually turned to look, she was gone.
So this particular shadow figure, you only saw her around the time that your dad was very ill. And I'm sorry about that.
But then before that, and then she was around for a while my dad was ill, and then for a while after he passed. But the Sasquatch one was a lot longer ago. I'm 51 now, and the Sasquatch one, the second one, the main encounter, the one that I spoke of, was when I was around 17. But I did see something similar before when I was a younger kid.
I feel like if you're going to share, as you say, that longer encounter, the one that you kind of mentioned on Instagram to me, the main reason that you're here, if you saw something similar, would you mind also probably sharing that one too?
I can tell you about that, but it was a different sort of shaped figure. The first time I saw it as a small child, I actually thought that I'd seen a werewolf because I didn't know about Bigfoot. I'd seen the Patterson photograph, but not the video. But I used to watch the horror movies. Lon Chaney used to love them, and I thought I'd encountered a werewolf. And I told in class what I'd seen, and I got laughed at, and it was absolutely humiliating and hurtful because I'd seen something real. It was a different shape, and my mother at the time said she had seen it and it was harmless. But the one I spoke of, definitely not harmless. I mean, it gave such a feeling of malice. It was just unreal.
So let's focus on that one when you were a small child, just for a moment here. Did you see it outdoors or indoors?
Yeah, I had gone out to play. What it was is, before I was born, my father became very ill and didn't get medical help. He was told he was a hypochondriac and a liar, and it gave him a nervous breakdown. And he went from a guy that would sail around the world. He owned his own wooden sailing ship. It still exists, and it's the last one of its classification. But what that classification is, I don't know. It's called the Osprey, but it has been featured on TV by its current owner. And he lost all of his money. His business partner embezzled and left my dad in debt. And my dad became agoraphobic, couldn't go out, lost all his money. And we ended up living in what you call a trailer park, which was attached to a farm. I'd gone out to play. I'd just gone out via garden gate. My dad used to have an old beat up van, what I think you would call it a panel van over there, that we used as a spare shed. Next to that, I saw this figure. It was a shadow, and it was more human than the second one, but it walked with a low, loping, bent-legged gait, swinging its arms like the Patterson video. Although I'd never seen that at the time, I had seen a photograph, and that was it in a book at school, a book about monsters. It had, from its arms, it had, like you could see, like straggly long hair, about 3 inches long. I ran inside thinking it was a werewolf that I'd seen. And my mother later said it was a shadow figure and that she had seen it and it was harmless. But as a kid, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the Wolfman from the horror movies, and it scared the absolute crap out of me, shall we say. But I mentioned it at school. I got laughed at, really, really laughed at. It was hurtful because I'd seen something real, but no one believed me. And the later one, in a corner of the trailer park, there was a small woods, and it was fenced off from the trailer park side, but you could climb the fence, or you could get into it from jumping a ravine that you'd go across from the trailer park where it wasn't fenced over a plank bridge onto fields that were used by the farm for cows and sheep, whatever they put in there. And those fields would go off for miles. I mean, my Uncle Bert used to go over there foraging for mushrooms, wild mushrooms. And you could jump the ravine into the woods. Now, I never liked those woods. Never liked them. They were dark and they'd give off a very, very eerie feeling. And I would never go in on my own as a small child. But when I was with other kids, I would go in, but I'd never feel right. The moment you went into those woods, I'm not talking about a forest, I'm just talking about small tops, just a few trees and the ravine. But you felt like you'd gone into a completely other world. It was eerie. Eerie, you felt unwelcome, or at least I did, and you felt you were being watched. You just felt menace. And I hated them. I literally hated them as a small child. Even when I was in there was a weird encounter once when I was in there with a gang of kids, and one of us had what you call a laughing bag, which I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a bag, and you press it and it laughs like the Joker with some kind of mechanism in it. And he had that hung in a branch in a tree. And as we were playing, that was thrown by something into the ravine and it was ruined. And I got the blame for it. The kid that it belonged to was a kid that would do things to his own belongings and then blame other kids so that they would get punished. He was a bit of a asshat, shall we say. Anyway, I hated those woods. But at the time of 17, my mother had come into some money and was able to buy a house. So we were able to move out of the trailer park into a house. I decided to make peace with those woods and I would go in there and confront it. And, prove to myself that there was nothing ever to be really scared of, because I was 17 and I thought, well, why am I still not liking those woods? Be a man, time to grow up. So I went in, climbed over the fence, and the moment I was in there, again, very, very eerie feeling, like you're not welcome. And you know how you get that feeling that someone is watching you, but you can't see them? Then they appear. Like it's like a feeling like you're being looked at through sniper sights if you're a soldier, And then the shot happens, or you will actually see something will give the sniper away, the glint of reflection or something, and you'll see them and you duck. I felt myself being watched, and I thought, well, there shouldn't be anybody here because the trailer park used to close for the season. It was only us that lived there and some other guy that got permission. Then the only people would be there would be farm workers. And I thought, well, someone's watching me. And I slowly turned my head. Next to one of the trees was a figure. Now, it wasn't a substantial figure, but I had the certainty in my head that it could become one, that it could make itself from intangible to tangible, if that makes sense, that it could manifest. Couldn't make out any features like eyes or anything like that, but I could make out the shape. And it stood about 7 feet tall, and it had the conical sort of head, like you see in some of the images or drawings, with sort of no neck, like the trapezius muscles go straight up into the side of the head. absolutely immense, colossal shoulders. I mean, really broad across, broader than a man wearing American football armor. I mean, I'm a bodybuilder. I used to want to be world's strongest man. I used to lift weights and was really, really strong. And my shoulders, even at the height of my bodybuilding, I stopped because of illness, were nothing to the width of this thing. I mean, it was like another foot on either side of the width of my shoulders. And you could make out the arms, and the arms were huge. The biceps were huge, and huge, powerful forearms, huge, fat, powerful hands, broad chest, tapering to a very, very narrow waist. And I would say, if I could see the back of it, a small, athletic, tight backside, and then legs that weren't as large in proportion to the arms. Like, you know how some people draw cartoon superheroes with massive arms and smaller legs? Like that, going down to its feet. And it was just stood there motionless, staring at me, with me staring at it. I got this feeling, you're not welcome. Get out now, or you're dead. If you don't leave, I will manifest and rip you apart. I scrambled over the fence. I didn't jump the ditch, which would have been the fastest way out. I went the straightest way, which was go over the fence and run back to we had by then a double unit chalet. It had been made into a permanent chalet. I'm not a good runner. I have a respiratory issue. Prevented me from joining the armed forces, but I didn't know what it was at that time. But I got over that fence, cut my leg open on a jagged nail that was sticking out, ripped through my jeans into my leg. Funnily enough, there's no scar, although it was quite a cut and there was blood. I got home, ran inside, didn't look back. I really didn't want to look back in case it was following. I literally thought maybe it's following. Slammed the door, and I was white, and I was literally shaking like a leaf. My parents asked me what was wrong. And my dad is a denier of the supernatural, or was. He's passed away. He died in 2016 of cancer. But my mother was a believer. My brother was there, my oldest brother, and me and him are estranged. Along with my other brother, we don't get on. That's why I changed my surname. My dad didn't believe me and dismissed the story. My mother and my brother could see that something was seriously wrong because I was that shaken. Plus, there was the blood on my leg and the rip in my jeans. They believed me, didn't speak because my dad didn't want to discuss it. He didn't want to know. He wanted me to shut up. But yeah, I've never been back. I've never been back. Now, funnily, on Facebook now as an adult, I've made a friend who is a paranormal investigator in the UK. She told me that by pure coincidence, she has actually been to where I grew up and been in those woods, and she doesn't like them. Her name is Kaz Rooney. She used to have a Facebook group called the Entity Seeker UK, and she has said those woods were bad. My mother later told me that those woods were one of the meeting places of a local coven, and that coven wasn't what I would call the nice witches that I know now with tarot readings and stuff. They were more like the Hammer House of Horror, Dennis Weekly, let's summon the devil is our pal kind of thing. There you go. That was the Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, it's probably never good when if you have the witches that are doing the darker stuff in a certain area, right? And then anybody else trying to go in there having just a walk or a look-see.
The woods were literally banned. Those woods were out of bounds. You'd get told, get out if you were in there. But as kids, most of the kids, we were tearaways. We couldn't resist, although I didn't like them. I literally got that bad feeling,
So a classic shadow figure, and I won't say person, let's just say shadow figure, right? Because then that can be any shape or form.
You know how someone would draw a sketch for one of your type Monster Quest type witness shows on, television or on social media. You know how someone would draw a sketch and they'd fill it in, they'd draw the outline and they'd fill it in and it'd just be black. It was like that, but you could clearly see the outline. I was that close up to it that I could see detail of it. It seemed to say in my head that it could become a solid figure if it chose to, and if I didn't get out immediately, it would, and I would die. I honestly, literally believed that I was going to die. Even as I climbed the fence, I thought, I'm going to feel its hands on me. It's going to pull me back. I'm dead. Because the size of it, the power, even the sense of power that you got from just the shape of it, the width of the shoulders, the size of the arms, the size of the hands, the width of the chest, a human being wouldn't stand a chance. It would literally be able to tear off your limbs, break you in two. I mean, this thing was bigger than a gorilla.
So since you are so close, and I know exactly what you're talking about because, well, your description isn't exactly like mine because they were just completely black cutouts. And I couldn't see any detail. I could just see them moving. However, with you being that close, you mentioned the cut of the bicep. So you were close enough to, even though this was essentially a shadow, a black shadow, you were close enough that you could see definition of forearms and where the biceps started and ended.
I could see the hands. I could see the shoulder. I mean, the shoulders were, like I say, its build was like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the top of his game when he was Mr. Olympia. It was literally like a bodybuilder body, but with massive hands. I mean, really big hands, thick fingers, thick thumbs. And like I say, there was no neck to it. Like the trapezius muscles went all the way up into the sides of its head.
But
the classic, slightly conical head.
Right, but it skipped leg day, you said.
Sorry?
You said it skipped leg day, essentially, though, right? The legs were not as impressive.
The legs seem less developed. Although they look powerful, they look less developed than the arms. Like the arms were its main instrument, shall we say.
Now, you mentioned during the one that you called a werewolf, you kind of got the impression that it had hair on it. What about this one? Did it have hair or fur?
Couldn't see much hair. I could just see this shape. It was almost like you would imagine if the hair could be very close to the body, so you couldn't actually make out any shagginess to the edges of it, or shaved even. There was no detail of its features. It was just black, like a silhouette, like a cutout of a black piece of paper. But you could tell that it wasn't. It was like a shadow.
So when you were that small child and you're seeing that other scary thing in it and you called it a werewolf, and you unfortunately, we've all done it. We've shared what's happened to us and we've gotten laughed at. Shame on them, not on you. You did the right thing. So you were aware of this term werewolf at that time.
Yeah, I was a big fan of horror films. I used to watch the old black and white ones. I mean, I literally loved Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, Boris Karloff, all of that stuff. I mean, they didn't scare me at all. I mean, I didn't like the Creature from the Black Lagoon. That was the only one I didn't like, but now I do. And I've drawn him. Love the Gill Man now. Even got the Mego figure.
You didn't like him because he frightened you?
Yeah, he was the only one that did. But the Wolf Man, Lon Chaney, I wasn't scared of it. Dracula, I literally loved. By pure coincidence, I have a friend who is descended from Radu Dracula, Vlad the Impaler's brother.
Wow.
And I'm an honorary member of the Tepes family. No paperwork, but my friend is descended from Radu Dracula.
That's cool.
Which is, really cool.
That's cool beans, as we would say, right?
I even put it on my Facebook, yeah. I even put it on my Facebook. But I love the monsters. I mean, I love the Hammer ones, Christopher Lee. I mean, I actually know Kyla Monroe, and she signed some of my artworks. I've
So,
met her on numerous occasions at Comic Cons.
so were you aware of the creature known as Bigfoot at the time of this encounter?
I couldn't read. I had learning difficulties. I had brain damage as a child. I got attacked by an adult, asphyxiated, throttled, left for dead, and was clinically dead for quite a while, and then came back.
I'm sorry. The StreamYard stepped on you. You got attacked by what?
An adult. Won't go into it because of legal issues.
Oh gosh.
But let's say it was covered up and she got away with it.
Oh.
It caused me to have seizures through my late teens and 20s to the age of around 40. But that put paid to me being a bodybuilder because it became dangerous to lift the weights, you know?
Right. Jeez.
One time I used to have an average of 8 seizures a day at one time. That is worst.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I couldn't read or write till around the age of 10. I'd see pictures, and I had seen a picture of the Patterson tape, but no, I hadn't seen the actual video to know what Bigfoot was.
Do you think there's any chance that this was something in the woods that could essentially mimic or shapeshift or turn into whatever it wanted?
It's possible that it took an image that it thought that I'd be afraid of. It took an image to make me scared. I mean, the one on the field, my mom said it was harmless, but the one in the woods was not. It just projected pure get out or you're dead.
Well, and it's unfortunate as well that I know that it doesn't seem like that was a huge area of woods, but it was unfortunate that you ended up being that close to it. That sounded like a terrifying situation.
I literally believed, even as I booked it, shall we say, and got scrambled over that fence, that it was going to pull me back and I would be literally torn limb from limb. Strong as I became, I mean, I'd already started lifting weights then. Strong as I became, I don't believe that a human being could stand against an ape if it became an ape, you know?
I do wonder if even take that very same moment, and you had a friend with you, and assume that it, quote unquote, it, whatever it is, it wanted to show itself. I wonder if when you're looking at it and then your friend is looking at it, if you would have seen the exact same thing, or if on
the only time, as I say, that I knew of it to reveal itself in any way was when it threw that laughing bag or giggle bag, as you call them. I don't know if they made it to America, but they were a crazed toy here in the 1970s. It was like a cloth bag, and there was some mechanism inside it, and it would make a sound like ha 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 ha, mechanical when you shook it. And it threw that from where it was hanging into the ditch, and it was ruined. And of course, the kid who owned it blamed me.
Right. Well,
because he was an asshat. I mean, I actually know at one time that he smeared his own coat with dog muck, and then told my parents that I did it, that I chased him.
That is the exact definition of an asshat. Wonderful term, also, by the way.
Right, cool beans. I got that from watching the cartoon version of Jumanji that was out.
Yeah.
When they had the original movie.
Yeah. No, I do wonder, because I think some of these things, some are more powerful than others, and they can change shape, and they can decide, oh, here's what I think you are going to piss yourself over, and here's what I think this person would do the same over. I just wonder if there was someone different the next day went in and they saw Pennywise the clown instead of what you think of as a Bigfoot,
Now you say that, you know how Pennywise would show himself as the thing that the kids most feared.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been like that, but I had no reason really to fear Bigfoot because I wasn't that. I had seen the film Boggy Creek before the encounter when I was a teenager. But why would I expect to see one in the small woods in the UK? You know, I thought they were only Himalayas for the Yeti, the Russian Almas, which I later learned of, and of course the American classic, all the ones you've got over there. To the idea that both definitions exist. I think there's a tangible animal out there because there's so many sightings, and so many people have got evidence of the footprints. Who knows what's really out there? I mean, I'm open to the idea that it's Gigantopithecus, which I've seen watching documentaries. There could even be Neanderthal man out there still. In the UK, there's a legendary thing of a wild man that does live in woodland, and it's called a wood rose, I think it's pronounced. And it's supposedly a human, but hairy, that's gone back to nature and lives in the woods. It's a wild man, which is a coincidence to the thing I saw, you know? Maybe at one time, centuries ago, those woods were bigger and had been cleared for farming. They could have gone further, you know?
Did the legend of Boggy Creek frighten you?
Yeah, because it said it was true. But by then, you know, it's gone. Once the movie has gone out of your head, you don't remember it, you know. Who cares? But at the time, yeah, that was a big thing that all the kids were talking about in school next day. You know, did you see it? Did you see it? As I've grown up, I've become very interested in cryptids. I have seen the UK big cats, been up close and personal to one of those, and that wasn't a shadow.
Oh, you mean the big cats that do not exist in the UK, right? That's what they tell you guys.
Yeah, yeah. I've been as close to that as I was to the shadow Bigfoot.
Oh, that was probably a little frightening.
I was with my parents.
Was it running away?
Yeah, there's no, it was looking at me. The story was that when my dad was able to go out again, he wasn't rich, but he had an old car that he bought, and we took it out in the countryside. In Exmoor, where the panther first shown up, there's a woodland by the side of the road called Deer's Leap. Steep wood, very, very pretty. And anyway, my dad stood there, and I said, I need to go for a pee. Of course, I'm going to go out of sight of the road because you don't want anybody to see you having a pee and, you know, be upset, especially a woman. Anyway, I went up into the woods, away from the road, and I'm having a pee. And again, you know, you get that feeling you're being watched. And I turn. Not far away from me was undergrowth, like a bush. There was like a hole in it. It was made in like a little tunnel into the bush. And I could make out the head of a very large cat, very large, in the shadows. Strangely enough, I finished the pee, hurriedly zipped myself away, and did the wrong thing. You know, you're not supposed to run from a big cat. But I figured that momentum and the steepness of the hill, I'd be able to get away from it, which probably I wouldn't if it had pursued me. And I ran down the hill, and my parents were still at the car, and I'm saying, get in the fucking car, get in the fucking car, get in the fucking car, at the top of my voice as I ran. And my dad was offended. Don't you speak like that to us. And I just said, get in the car now. And my mother saw something behind me on the hill. She said, get in the car. They both jumped in the car, and my mother opened the back door, and I dived into the back door. And somehow, I don't know if it was me who shut it or she shut it by reaching over and pulling it and shutting it. But my mother said that it did not pursue me. It just stood between the trees in the direction that I had gone to go up for the pee, and then come back looking at me as if to say, you an idiot. You know, it was more amused by me than anything else.
Yeah, you hear a lot of those stories. There's a lot of sightings of those big cats, and they refuse to acknowledge it.
I mean, I tried getting evidence once. An elderly lady that used to live next door to me phoned me in the middle of the night and said there was a lion in our garden, by our garden pond. And I said, for God's sake, Joy, you potty, go back to bed, you're dreaming. I thought it was going to be a domestic cat. The next day, when I went out to feed our fish, in the mud by the pond was a massive, massive feline footprint, bigger than my hand. We didn't have anything. I didn't have a camera. I've never been good at taking photographs and couldn't really afford a camera. So I thought, plaster of Paris, get a cast. Of course, we didn't have any. Sod's Law, as we call it over here, or you call it Murphy's. I thought, well, run down to the hardware store, get some plaster, Paris, come back, get a cast. It was peeing down. By the time I got back, it had washed out. There was nothing there. According to this elderly lady, I'm glad I didn't go outside. She said there was a male, African male lion in our garden and 2 females.
Yeah, I bet everybody was watching the small animals at that point, extra close.
The footprint was bigger than my hand.
Yeah, that's a big no thanks, getting close to the big kitty cats, especially the way they stalk.
You might think that I'm making all this up. We've seen, multiple things throughout my life. Yeah.
No, I don't. Most of my episodes are actually exactly like this, to be honest with you.
I'm trying to be a public figure. I'm an artist. I mean, you saw my old drawing of Sasquatch. I'm a writer, even though, had learning difficulties. I'm dyslexic, but I've written 5 novels that are out self-published on Amazon. I got 4 books of art, a book of crude memes with a character I created. I'm writing a novel now, and I'm still working on more art and planning more books of art. I'm going to be doing a Gothic artwork book when I've got enough drawings with witches and vampires and demonesses and maybe a few fairies and stuff like that. So if I'm lying, I would discredit myself as a public figure, I'm inviting ridicule.
No, you've come to the right place. Most of my episodes sound very, very similar to this.
I've never seen you before. I do like to watch Monster Week, Monster Quest. I mean, I'm very interested in cryptids. I mean, I've got a few megalodon teeth that I bought from eBay. I'm fascinated by the idea that still exists. And I just saw you, and the moment I saw you, I thought, she looks a really nice person. She looks like someone you can talk to. And I thought, well, let's reach out.
Well, I'm glad that you did, Dylan. I really, really am. Hey, I have a question for you. You mentioned amongst talking about the quote-unquote werewolf shadow figure, you mentioned, that you just quickly said, it wasn't like the shape of the first one, which wasn't humanish at all. What was the shape of the first one?
The second one that was the more Bigfoot-like. The first one that I saw as a little child, its shape was humanoid except for the long, appeared to be straggly tendrils of hair on its forearms mostly as it swung its arms.
I apologize.
And it was the way it moved. It was the way it moved. I mean, I'd never seen a human running with that kind of stride and that low and swinging its arms like that and the really bent legs. I mean, it's like its legs didn't ever straighten. It's like its legs stayed bent all the time.
Well, no wonder you called it a werewolf. No, I apologize. I thought you meant there was one before the werewolf.
No, that was
situation.
The first one.
Okay,
that was the first one.
So
but my mother had seen that one and said it was harmless. I mean, there was another time when I did see it. Between then, the harmless one, it walked past a window, and I just saw a glimpse of it when I was sat at home with my mother's cat. Waiting for my parents to come home. They'd been out. And by then I thought, well, it's not harmless. It's outside. My mother said it's harmless. Don't worry about it. But the place where I lived, there were a few places that gave off menace. Really gave off menace. There was a store of public trash cans for the use of the people with the trailers, which as a teenager, I would avoid going past. If I had to go past it, I'd run past it. The village where I grew up was very, very old. I mean, there's a headland there that's got Roman remains, Bronze Age remains, Iron Age, Stone Age. It goes back that far. And I know there was a battle fought between the Saxons and the Vikings. There's a Viking ship sunk off the beach, but they can't get to it. They were going to build a cofferdam, but they never went through with it, but they know it's there. There was a Viking massacre not far from where the Saxons wiped out a bunch of Danes.
I do wonder why I guess this is a two-part question. Why did the witches choose those woods, and how long ago were the witches supposed to have been doing what they were doing in that area? Was that kind of an old wives' tale that had been told for a long time?
We went there in 1972 is when I was born, and we went there straight after I was born. That's when my dad contracted the illness, lost his money, and like I say, his business partner embezzled and disappeared, leaving my dad in debt. And the two stores that my dad had, he sold televisions and radios. And my dad's ship had to be sold to pay off the debt. My dad's he had at one time 3 E-type Jaguars, and they went. So yeah, my dad went from rich to penniless, in debt. But the coven had been there from before my time. My mother knew who they were. They invited her to join, and she said no, wasn't interested. But she knew who they were and where they met. And I did know that the coven had a dislike of me as a kid. I told my mother, don't ever bring him to our house when my mother visited them. My mother was a parish council.
Wow. Why is that?
And they didn't like me. Literally didn't like me, but at least they lived opposite. They had said to my mother, don't ever bring him. We don't like him. Don't ever bring him.
I wonder if that's because they could sense that you could sense things, that you could see things.
I mean, I mentioned about a tree that used to be in their garden. And it was a very large, very beautiful looking tree, but I always thought it was sinister. When the wind would make the branches move and the leaves rustle, instead of sounding beautiful like you'd expect when you're in a forest, I had a sinister feeling. And I mentioned that to my mother. And my mother said, that tree is their power totem. It's where they draw their power from. And that tree was condemned. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It seemed to be healthy, but it was cut down. Within a week of that tree going, both of those old women, they were elderly spinster sisters, died having been healthy within a week of that tree being cut down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In the days apart, they were both gone. And until then, they were healthy.
That actually is super creepy.
Directly opposite. They lived directly opposite my home.
Oh, geez. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
How nice for you. That's a nice way to grow up.
No, I'm not scared. I mean, I'm a witch myself. I'm not a practicing one. I'm not knowledgeable, but I do give free general tarot readings on Facebook, which is shared out through loads of groups. My cousin is very, very knowledgeable, and she runs groups and she sells crystals, and her stuff's quality. I mean, she's got stuff from sources that no longer exist. They came from mines that shut in the 50s. So you can't get the ones she's got unless you get them from her.
Do those woods still exist?
Yes. As I say, my friend Kaz has mentioned, I've never been back. I have been to the village, but I've never gone on the farm and the trailer park where it was, because I don't know the people there now. I mean, it's been 30 years since we moved away, more than 30 years. Some of them wouldn't know me that are there now. And if I went there, it might be, who are you? What are you doing here? And of course, I wouldn't want to visit those woods in the height of the season when it's open for people to see me go in there and think, well, what the hell is you doing? You know?
You know, Dylan, at least it wasn't a situation where it followed you home. You know, maybe it was bound to those woods.
I didn't look back. And I didn't feel safe until the door was slammed. But it could easily have got in because, you know, it was a mostly wooden chalet, bricked up to the bottom of the wood, and we had large windows, so there was no way we could have kept it out.
Or it just changes into a wisp of smoke and goes in through a keyhole or something, and then once it's inside, it can turn into something else. I mean,
No,
who knows what these things can do?
If it was tangible, it could have smashed that place apart.
Oh, absolutely. From the sounds of it, yeah.
It was literally huge, and its body was literally like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was Mr. Olympia, but not human because of the shape of the head and the size of the hands. The fact that it had basically no neck, just trapezius muscles.
Yeah, I would hazard to say that it took a page out of the fact that you were frightened by the legend of Boggy Creek, which is what it was supposed to do.
I've seen that film, and I've forgotten that film. I had no reason to think of Bigfoot because I wasn't into Bigfoot at that era. Now I am, because I'm fascinated. I've seen something, and I'm fascinated by all cryptozoology. I mean, I had a Scottish friend who claimed that he saw the Loch Ness monster, but whether or not that was true is anyone's guess. But I have a friend in America who says she's seen the chupacabra. I'm very, very interested in the supernatural and cryptozoology. I think there's scope for both aspects of Bigfoot and Sasquatch to exist, a physical animal and the shadow animal. I don't think it's alien like people claim, it comes down in a spaceship. That's Doctor Who, isn't it, really, or Star Trek? I mean, how is a giant ape, unless it's much more intelligent than us, going to pilot a flying saucer? Unless it's more advanced than us. I mean, then you're talking Planet of the Apes. But I don't think it is. But it could be. I mean, I'm open-minded. I will take everybody's word, unless I can get a feel from them that they're making up a story and they're lying. I will take anybody's word for it on face value, because people have experiences and I've had my own.
Well, and as you kind of hinted, as far as I seem like someone that would be open-minded, I think that that's something that, especially in the Bigfoot community, that needs to happen more. And we don't need to say we're saying Bigfoot
with the drawings.
Well, Dylan, since you do, you said you're writing books and you've got art and all these other things. Did you want to promote yourself a little bit, like websites or social media outlets that people can contact you?
I'm no computer savvy, and I have no real money. I paid for a promotion, and it was if you pay us so much, you will get 5,000 followers within a week, and I got nothing from it. I'm basically poor. I'm on what you call welfare, and at the moment I have less coming in from that than goes out. So I struggle, but I use the hashtags. I've got the Instagram, which you've seen. If you follow me, you'll see my artwork and my books. Excuse the doll. Yes, she is one of those, but she was bought as a posable model. Maya. She's actually considered to be my familiar spirit. She's in my front room, fully clothed, and scares the crap out of visitors.
Keep the visitors away. Well, make sure to give out, what is your Instagram account, if you want to give out your Facebook, and where to find your books.
Battle for 72.
Sorry, I was talking when you said it. Say it one more time, so I'm not talking over you.
That's Author 72. That's all together. And my Facebook is DA, with the D and the A together, Debat. There are other profiles that were mine that got hacked and I couldn't get back. Also, recently, 2 scammers used my profile picture and name to try and scam people, pretending to be me, offering their readings. Send me a friend request and I'll send you my card reading or whatever.
Well, yeah, I'll make sure to link especially your Instagram and Facebook in the show notes at intothefrayradio.com. Dylan, what about your books on Amazon? Are those under Dylan Debat?
Yeah, they're on Amazon. They're under the name Dylan Debat. And also the ones I wrote under the name Dylan Seymour, I haven't changed. But there's 5 novels. My first one was my own version of the Wizard of Oz story. There's one based on the myth of Medusa. There's one which vampires in a sort of medieval society. There's a horror one and a later one, a fantasy, and I'm writing the sequel to my Oz story. And then there's books of my art. I did a series of artworks based on the female characters from an online game called Kiss of War, which is a war game, and all the characters are female, very pin-up-y. I'm very inspired by pin-up art. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Alberto Vargas. And I've actually had an email, like on my Facebook from his family, where I'd use his images and change them about and multiply the images or reverse them as my tribute to Vargas.
Well, have you thought about why these things are so attracted to you?
God knows. I mean, I know I am considered a psychic, but I don't really think it. But I do tarot cards. My mother, there was witchcraft in our family on one side. There was an elderly relative who wanted to teach me, but my grandmother, who was the matriarch, told her to disappear and never contact me again. And I saw her once after that, which was to say goodbye. I don't even know what her name was, but I can still see her in my head.
And that's because
as I saw her as a little child.
And that's because she was going to teach you dark things? She didn't.
Probably yes.
Yeah. Okay.
My grandmother was very anti-witchcraft in any way, shape, or form. Problem was, on one side of my family was Orthodox Jews, and the other side was the witches, and of course that's a conflict, isn't it?
Yeah, that doesn't mix well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had family that I don't know of, and I don't know the surname, and I can't ask now because I'm estranged from my living genetic family. But Holocaust victims, or believed to be, they were in France before the war, and after the war, there was never any contact, and they were never found. Not one of them. And you would have thought at least somebody would have got in touch. But yeah, I seem to be a magnet. I seem to be a magnet for spirits. I mean, this apartment, I see cats out of the corner of my eyes. I mean, the other week I mentioned to my friend I call my sister, I've known her for nearly 30 years and we're close, that my cat was asleep on my bed, and by the kitchen, some distance from my bedroom, I heard a cat meow. And I thought, that's Ollie, that's my cat. And I turned thinking he wants feeding or whatever, even though he's been fed. But no, the cat. And Ollie was asleep on my bed. But there was a distinct meow.
Dylan, what age was your brain injury?
I would say about 6. I don't want to go into
No. I wasn't. I have a point to my
I would tell you. Privately, I would tell you.
No, it's fine. I have a point to the question. That's why I was asking. So the werewolf, what age was that? You said small child, but do you remember around what age that was?
After that, I was probably about 9 when I saw it.
Okay, so
the injury was when I was about 6, and I was dead for quite a while. I was asphyxiated and dead.
Well, I was just wondering and asking that because I'm wondering if that brain injury kind of turns you into a conduit of some sorts, unbeknownst to you and to no fault of your own.
You are close. They do say that, don't they? If you've been close to death,
yeah,
you're close to the other side. Also, right. The family history of witchcraft.
And
the fact that I grew up in a village that was rife with witchcraft. Yeah. It was literally rife.
Yeah.
Literally rife.
I would hazard to say that probably all of those things put together has kind of put you in the positions that you've been in, right? So
yeah, witchcraft seemed to be the local pastime, like you had the Women's Institute. I think they also had the coven sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that stuff. When you talk about witchcraft, it can be light and airy and the white stuff, and then it can get really dark, really, really quickly.
I mean, I'm open to both sides. I mean, my cousin says I'm very dark, and I tend to be peaceful. You don't bother me, I won't bother you. And I like to give out readings. I like to be helpful. I like to be nice. But I got that potential to be very dark. Although I don't actually practice, I don't do spells, I don't do the call to quarters and God knows what. I just tend to muddle along and I know things, instinctively know things, but mostly I do the tarot readings and rune stones and oracle readings.
Well, everybody go check him out. It's Dylan Debat on Instagram and Facebook and Amazon.
Debat author 72.
Yeah, I will make sure to link all of that. No, that's okay. I'll make sure to link all that at intothefrayradio.com in the show notes and in the descriptions